So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'll begin with a little story, which is that a few days ago, I was biking back to the chapel from downtown, and I made a left onto West Hopkins, and it was a little bit too tight, and there was a guy who was making a right turn at the same time, and we were just like, we were like at least 5 or 6 feet away from each other, but it was a little bit too close for comfort. And as many of you know, I am a person who is very comfortable with a curse word or two. But what came out of this man's mouth was something that I had never heard in my entire life. And it brought out like the Philadelphian in me. And so I turned to this guy and I was ready to rumble. But then I did the little practice that I always do, which is I realized two things, right? The first thing I realized is this man could be a congregant. But then the second thing I realized is I scared him. So he wasn't thinking straight. And so instead, when I turned around, I apologized and I just biked on. Because here's the thing that we all know about fear. Like when you get scared, your nervous system floods immediately. And so fear is at first, it's not something that happens in your brain. Fear is at first something that happens in your body. And evolutionarily, that's actually really important, right? Because if you are trying to outrun a moose, can you outrun a moose? Okay, I am still new here. I am still learning. If you are trying to outrun a fox, you can outrun, no? Oh, for God's sake, people. If you are trying to outrun Ari Chase, right? All right, you actually need that adrenaline, right, to start moving fast. But that same adrenaline actually doesn't help you if you are, for instance, about to speak in front of a bunch of people and your body starts shaking. I think we actually all already understand the science of that. Those are the easy cases when it comes to fear being helpful or unhelpful. But there are actually also some cases which are a little bit more complicated. Like, for instance, when you can't tell if the fear that you're feeling is because of something real, you have crucial and factual information, or whether this fear belongs to something that actually happened a very, very long time ago and has no bearing on the actual room you're in, right? Like, one obvious example of this is like, if you grew up in a family in which when you heard two people yelling at each other, it was a sign of terrible things to come, and still as an adult, whenever you hear two people yelling at each other, you assume something in your body, even though you don't really know what's about to happen. So how are we actually supposed to know when fear is supposed to be heeded, and when it's supposed to be noticed, and when it's actually just supposed to be let go? So our Torah portion this week has one set of answers, and it turns out to be in the least likely of places. It's in a set of military regulations about which soldiers are allowed to skip a war if they so choose. We are, as many of you know, in the book of Deuteronomy. This week's Torah portion is called Shoftim, and it describes what happens as the Israelites are gearing up for battle. So first, the high priest is giving all the soldiers exactly the kind of speech that you would expect. He says this: "Hear, O Israel, let not your courage falter. Do not be in fear or in panic or in dread of them." That's like your standard issue, be brave. I assume this is the type of stuff that's still said to this very day. But then, interestingly, there's a whole other set of officials that step up and they start sending soldiers home. This is what they say. They say to the soldiers, "Is there anyone here who is betrothed but not yet married? You all can go home. Is there anyone here who has planted a vineyard but hasn't yet harvested the fruit? You all can go home. Is there anyone here who has built a house but has not yet dedicated it? You can all go home." These are quite lovely exemptions. If there's anyone there who is sort of in a just starting out your life period, don't risk your life in battle. Instead, go home and start your life. Okay. But then there is this very interesting fourth exemption that is presented. is there anyone here, and remember, they're speaking to a bunch of soldiers, about to go into battle. Is there anyone here who is afraid and disheartened? Go home. So that's it. That's the whole qualification. No one is ever asked to justify their fear or what they're feeling. They just get to go home. And so, of course, as you can imagine, the rabbis are obsessed with this line because they want to understand it. And so in the Mishnah, we're going back about 2,000 years here, there's a rabbi named Yossi, and he looks at these first 3 exemptions about the house and the betrothal and the grapes, and he says something remarkable. He says, Lefikach talta lo haTorah et kol elu. Therefore, the Torah hung all of these on him. So I'm going to translate that into English for you. What this Rabbi Yossi here is saying is that the house and the vineyard and the bride are actually only a disguise. And they only exist so that the man who is frightened can actually walk out of the camp and have everyone else assume that he has grapes to tend, and not that he's actually scared. So I love this. I love that the Torah built for this man a cover story. It assumed that he'd be a little bit embarrassed that he was so scared, and it spared him. It's very sweet, right? Okay, but to the rabbis, because of the rabbis, they continue. They want to know, what is exactly the fear that this man carries? Because they are the rabbis in the Talmud, they offer not one, but 2 different answers. First, we have Rabbi Akiva, who says, like, the obvious answer. What's the fear that the guy carries? He's going into war. Akiva says, it's a fear of the sword. He has a sword in front of him. That is his fear. But then the same Rabbi Yossi says, no. It's not about the sword that is facing him. In fact, this man is afraid that because he is certain that something from his past is going to lead him to be punished in the current moment. So there are 2 fears here, right? One responds to the threat right in front of you, right now. But the other one is a callback to a historical moment that makes the present look a lot scarier than it actually is. Some of you know I'm obsessed with the psychologist Brené Brown. I'm sure some of you are as well. And she has this really great teaching on how to get free of worry. It has 2 steps. I'm going to teach them to you. This might be the most important thing you hear all night. 2 steps for how to get free of worry. Step number 1, find out whether the data that you have actually warrants freaking out. Number 2, find out whether freaking out is actually going to help you. It's pretty simple. And the rabbis in this instance are actually asking something pretty close, right? They say, when we are afraid, first of all, ask yourself, is there an actual sword right in front of me? Or am I in this moment dredging up something from the past that is making me more afraid than this moment actually requires? And then you act on the facts, not the feelings, because the feeling is going to be real either way. Fear is contagious. And we know this because the Torah makes that explicit in this Torah portion as well. You know, if we go back to these 4, all right, if this, then go home. If that, then go home. Okay, so the 4th one is, if you're afraid, then go home, right? We all remember that, but that line continues as follows. So if you're afraid, go home, and the reason is, v'lo yimas et levav echav kilvavo, so that this one who goes home will not melt the hearts of his brothers the way his own heart has melted. This is what psychologists call emotional contagion. You don't catch someone's fear by agreeing with the facts, research has proven. You catch someone's fear when you are in the same room with it. The facts are less important than the physical proximity of the person who is afraid. Which adds a 3rd question to the 2 we've already asked this evening, which is, if I am feeling fearful, is this actually true to my own lived experience, or did I catch this fear from someone else? Because that is to a certain extent what happened on West Hopkins, right? I didn't think we were going to collide at all. I knew there was enough room for us to go past each other, but my body went into fear/anger mode right away because of this man who I passed. And he went into that mode right away. And I was actually kind of lucky that we were both on bikes so that we didn't stop, because we didn't have time for my heart to melt into his heart, because who knows what would have happened, and that it would not have been good, certainly for me. I was much smaller than him. But anyway, we live right now in a very tenuous moment for us as the American Jewish community, and it's not going to get any easier anytime soon. So tonight, as we speak to each other, I actually don't want to offer you any answers at all, but I do want to offer us as a community a few questions to help guide us through the weeks and months ahead. Because sometimes there actually is a sword. And obviously, some of what is happening in the American Jewish community right now is an actual sword, and it is not imagined. And when that is happening, our tradition has no interest in talking us out of it, nor do I. But not all of this is an actual sword. We are a people with a very long memory, and some of that is a gift, but some of that is also a pretty reliable machine for producing dread. And right now, in our group chats and in our feeds, we are to a certain extent melting each other's hearts. It's not always factual information. Sometimes it's just contagion. So as we enter into Elul together and start turning our hearts to 5787, I do just want to offer us a few questions. First of all, when is there actually a sword in front of us? When are we dredging up a past that is not actually in the room? What have we caught from other people? And who are we about to hand it to? And maybe because we're Jews and we love 4 questions, I'm just going to add a 4th question, which is, when I can't tell what the answers to the first of the 3 questions are, and we should all have the humility to know how often that is the case, who do I trust to help me figure this all out? So if you're looking for a kavanah for these next few weeks, between tonight and Rosh Hashanah, perhaps it can be this. Let's locate the real swords and do battle together. Let's locate our real feelings and honor them. Let's locate the well of courage that we all have, and it is deep, and we share it together. And let's locate the person or people who can help us tell the difference on the days when we can't. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.